Once again, I'll review the format again. Each candidate will be afforded 1 minute for their opening statement. Then we'll ask 5 questions to each candidate, 3 that are from the Leadership Long Beach alumni, and then 2 from the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And then each candidate will have a minute to share their closing statement. Once again, if you have a question that you want to be asked, please get a card from the volunteers. Please write legibly and hold up your hand so that our volunteers can pick up your question. And please focus your question on the city attorney's office. Following the question and answer session, each candidate will then provide a closing statement. Remember, this is a forum and not a debate, so no rebuttals statements will be permitted. Okay, let's get started. Please welcome our candidates for the City Attorney's Office, Don McIntosh and Jerry Shipsky. Candidates, right in front of you is the beautiful CJ, and she will hold up the yellow card when you have 15 seconds remaining, and then a red card when you are out of time. We'll start in order as listed on the City Clerk's website. Ms. McIntosh, you can share your 1 minute opening statement.
Great. Thank you all for being here tonight. The city attorney position is very different from the mayor or the city council. It's not a politician and doesn't set policy. The city attorney is the nonpartisan legal advisor for the city, advising every city department, board, commission, committee, and the city council. In this job, legal experience and experience with the city's legal issues really matters. I've been practicing municipal law for 30 years. I've worked for the federal government as a senior endangered species attorney for NOAA General Counsel. I have worked for cities and agencies throughout the state in private practice. In the last 6 years, I have been at the city attorney's office. From 2016 to 2021, I was working with the Port of Long Beach. And then last summer, I came over to the general law side and am now the assistant city attorney. I'm an experienced trial attorney. I've handled cases in state and federal court, including one case I won that went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. Ms. Shipsky, your opening statement, you have 1 minute.
Yes, thank you, Leadership Long Beach, for doing this. I want you to look behind here on that map. I worked on the Queensway Bay Committee for many, many years to help develop what we're sitting in right now, so I'm very excited to be here. I was born in Long Beach, raised my family here, and now raising a granddaughter. And over the past year, many of you have come to me and said, you know, something's wrong in Long Beach. We need to fix Long Beach. We don't feel connected. We don't feel listened to. In fact, we feel politics in Long Beach aren't broken, they're fixed. And we want somebody who's going to stand up and make certain that the system in Long Beach is open, accountable, and transparent. And that's what I'm here about. I've got 3 priorities: anti-corruption, fiscal responsibility, and aggressive risk management, which I think can help the city of Long Beach get back on the right track. So thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Shipsky. We are going to go to you first for question number 1. Values are one of the principles integral to Leadership Long Beach. What event in your life has had a significant impact on the values that shaped you as a leader?
Well, I would say being sworn into the United States Supreme Court bar by Justice Ginsburg did. She officiated at my swearing in. And from that point on, I really focused in on trying to make a difference in the community, and I did by being on Long Beach City Council, the Long Beach Community College Board of Trustees, and on a number of committee commissions and boards. And I used my law degree to be able to help people, and that's what I understand that she had said from the beginning, that that was the purpose of her community involvement, and that was to help her community.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to you, Ms. McIntosh, and I'll repeat the question. Values are one of the principles integral to Leadership Long Beach. What event in your life has had a significant impact on the values that shaped you as a leader?
I think probably the most important thing that shaped my career was discovering public law. When I realized I could work for cities and make a real difference in the communities that those cities serve. I have spent my entire career doing that, And I feel like I have been able to bring my values, my integrity, my honesty, my desire to help governments be transparent and be accountable to the citizens. I can bring those values in this job as a public servant. And I have done this my entire career. I am excited about leading an office that has 26 incredibly passionate, talented, and ethical attorneys who are really committed to the city of Long Beach. And so I think that's really been what shaped me.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. We'll get back to you for the second question. So you'll start the second question. How would the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
I would say that they describe my leadership style as collaborative and supportive. I'm not one of those people who likes to make people feel lesser than or inferior. I think that people learn best and become better when you encourage them, when you help them find better ideas. Mistakes are part of growing and learning. If you can't feel you're able to make a mistake, then you're never going to get anywhere. So people have to feel like they have the support to go try things, and if they don't do it right, that will teach them a lot more about how to do it right moving forward. So I think that's the way you teach people how to be better people, better lawyers. That's certainly what I've used with my kids, and I think that makes a good leader as well.
Thank you. And then Ms. Shipsky, I will repeat the question for you. How would the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
I think I can be described as a listener. One of the things I like to do is find out where people are, not only in their life, but in their career. And as an administrator, find out what tools they need to be successful. Because without that, you hold people to standards that they perhaps cannot reach. And so it has to be a participatory process. And I think that that's so important, particularly in the public sector.
Thank you, Ms. Shipsky. And now we'll go to our third question from our alumni. But before we go to that, please write down your questions that you have for the City Attorney's Office, and then we'll ask those questions after the third question. And then Ms. Shipsky, I'll start with you this time. The third question is, what lived experiences, both personal and professional, have prepared you for this position?
Well, I think being an attorney for 32 years, which I kid my opponent is 2 years longer than she's been, I think that and working for a variety of organizations, I've worked at every level of government, local, state, and federal. I've also worked for large corporations and small corporations. I've had my own law practice. And so I think that variety of experience gives me the opportunity to be able to make a meaningful contribution in the office of city attorney. Also, because I've been an elected official, I have been on the inside, so I know exactly what elected officials face, the questions they have, and perhaps some of the information that they don't have and that they need to make decisions. And so as city attorney, I can offer that to them. And I think that's an important attribute that anyone who takes this office needs.
Thank you. And then I'll go to you, Ms. McIntosh. I'll repeat the question. What lived experiences, both personal and professional, have prepared you for this position?
Well, I think the fact that I have done this work for 30 years has prepared me for this position. Municipal law is a very specialized area of law. If you practice slip and falls, if you practice other types of law, criminal law, you don't necessarily know municipal law. You have to practice it to really understand this. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I've run into so many issues that this city is going to face over the course of my career. And I cannot even imagine trying to do this job without that experience. There's a lot to be said in life for varied experience, but this is not the job that helps you with. In this job, you need experience doing this job. And you need experience doing this job at the City of Long Beach, so you know what the city's legal issues are, and you know what the city's litigation caseload is, and you can step into this job on day one and be prepared to do the job.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. And now we'll go to the questions from our audience. So thank you, audience, for your questions. First, it will be for Ms. McIntosh. And once again, you both get different questions each time, okay? As city attorney, what is your stance on the city council office holder account?
What is my stance on the city council office holder account? Well, the city council's office holder accounts are accounts that under the city municipal code, the city council members are allowed to have and use for office holder expenses. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. And then, Ms. Shipsky, your question is, the city has paid large judgments as a result of citizen complaints. What can you do to reduce these large judgments?
That's an excellent question, because that's one of the things that taxpayers say to me all the time. They're tired of being piggy banks for the city of Long Beach. We need aggressive, proactive risk management. We need to assess why we've paid out $30.4 million for police misconduct, $16.6 million for a telephone tax that should have not been placed, $12 million for a water pipeline fee that shouldn't have been assessed, $30.9 million for a water rate increase that should not have been assessed. We need to look at every department, and we need to see how do we make sure this doesn't happen again. Because without doing that, we continue to repeat the problem. And I think that's one of the most important things that the city attorney can bring forward, is to make certain that we do have that risk management.
Thank you. And then I'm going to ask you another question, Ms. Shipsky. As the city attorney, you are in a unique position to provide guidance to other elected positions in the city. What is your approach to having difficult conversations and speaking truth to power?
Well, I think that's probably what I'm best known for doing in my life. I think what you do is you come with a measure of respect, but you present the issue in the terms of the city attorney represents the entire city, not just the mayor, not just the city council, but the entire city. And I think you have to share that perspective with the person that you're talking with, that this, what you want to do, may impact the city negatively. How can we find alternatives to make what it is that you're trying to put forward happen, but do it in a way that is going to protect the city?
Thank you, Ms. Shipsky. And next will be Ms. McIntosh. What is the key to success when communicating with the public?
I think the key to success is being a good listener. You need to listen, and you need to help solve problems. There's a lot of things that our office does that are highly technical, and a lot of people don't understand because most people aren't lawyers. And so you need to be able to listen to people's concerns and have conversations with them so that they can understand what's actually happening. Because that's part of our job as a city official and as a public servant, is to communicate with the public. And one of the things that I would like to do if I'm elected is to have more open communication with the residents and the communities in Long Beach. We've been told that sometimes the city council members have their meetings and people ask questions about legal issues, and the city council members aren't necessarily equipped to answer those questions. So I'd like to have some of our attorneys actually go to these meetings and be prepared to answer those questions for the community so they can really understand better some of the legal issues that really are challenging for the city. A big one is homelessness. There's a lot of cases in the Ninth Circuit that really limit what the city can do.
If you can close,
Thank you.
And now we have our closing statements. Each of you will have 1 minute, and I'm going to start with Ms. Shipsky. You have 1 minute to share.
Yeah, my name is Jerry Shipsky. I'm running for city attorney, and I'm running on 3 issues. The first is anti-corruption. In the lobby, you can get your anti-corruption toolkit because we need to make Long Beach open, transparent, and accountable. I'm running about fiscal responsibility. I am going to roll back the city attorney's salary, which is the highest elected official in the state of California. It's $319,000. We need to roll it back and use that money for programs within the city attorney's office to reach out to the community. An aggressive, proactive risk management. We need, again, to prevent, not just pay out, all these excessive claims. We need to work with each department. We need to find out what was missing. Why did this get caused? Is there training? Is there discipline that needs to take place? That, I think, we can bring forward. My name is Jerry Shipsky. I ask for your endorsement, which means your vote on June 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shipsky. Next will be Ms. McIntosh. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. This is a really important election. The city attorney's job is technical and difficult. Legal experience and experience with the city's legal issues really matters. There's a big difference between passing the bar and actually practicing law, especially municipal law. In fact, several years ago, my opponent said, and I quote, "Selecting a successor city attorney who's not currently employed in the Long Beach City Attorney's Office is asking for trouble, especially when you see the list of pending litigation and other legal matters being handled by the Office of City Attorney." I have 30 years of municipal experience in the last 6 years here at the City Attorney's Office. I am the only candidate who has the legal experience to do this incredibly important work. That's why I've been endorsed by Charlie Parkin, the current city attorney, and the 3 city attorneys before him. I've also been endorsed by the president of the Long Beach Bar Association and the 8 presidents before her. The election is on June 7th. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. And please join me in thanking them both for being here today. I learned a lot about the city attorney's office, especially what they oversee. So thank you for educating us. And you may be dismissed from the stage. And as they are dismissed, we'll go ahead and transition to the city auditors. If the candidates can please also join the stage at this time.
Good evening. Next will be the race for City Auditor. Please join me in welcoming the candidates for this office, Laura L. Dowd and Daniel Miles. As a reminder, the forum will follow a format where all candidates will be asked to make a 1-minute opening statement. Once each candidate has completed their opening statement, the moderator will ask questions. In all, each candidate will be asked 5 questions. The first 3 questions were determined by leadership Long Beach alums. If anyone in the audience wants to submit a question for consideration, get a card from one of our wonderful volunteers. Write legibly and hold up your hand so one of our volunteers can pick up your question. Please focus your question on the race for city auditor. Following the question and answer session, each candidate will then provide a 1-minute closing statement. Remember, this is a forum, not a debate, so no rebuttal statements will be permitted. Candidates, a yellow card will be held up when you have 15 seconds remaining, and a red card will be held up when you're out of time. And our intelligent, beautiful, and talented CJ has the cards in the middle. We'll start in order listed on the city clerk's website. Let's begin with Ms. Dowd. 1-minute opening statement, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Leadership Long Beach, for hosting this forum tonight. I'm Laura Dowd, the City Auditor with the City of Long Beach. I love serving the city. I'm so grateful and honored to be the City Auditor for the City of Long Beach, the city that I was born in, the city where I met my husband of 32 years, the city where we're raising our 17-year-old daughter that's graduating from high school next year, where I'm committed to making changes for the next generation. I'm thankful for the time I've had as city auditor and the changes and the improvements we've made in the city, bringing in millions of dollars for programs that are important to our city, establishing a successful office that has received 8 awards from the Association of Local Government Auditors. They don't give out these awards just for fun. These are audits that were of exceptional value and quality that received awards. Our office has also passed 5 peer reviews showing that we live and work up to the highest standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dowd. Mr. Miles, your opening statement, please, 1 minute.
Thank you, Leadership Long Beach. My name is Daniel Miles. I'm a 35-year CPA. I started my audit career with Ernst & Young. I worked with Pepsi in starting up their internal audit department, that would be Pepsi bottling. I worked with Coors, Reed's, and the Port of Long Beach generating their financial reports, which is the subject of many audits. The financial reports are the roadmap of how the money is spent in a city. Today, we just got our first roadmap from the city regarding transactions that occurred in October 2020. I plan to bring to you the definition of how to look at those roadmaps, where to look at, and see where the money, which is a record this year of every single year. Please go to danmiles.org. You will see reliable data there, and it's frequently updated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let's go to our first question, and we'll keep it with you, Mr. Miles. What lived experience, both personal and professional, have prepared you for this position?
Thank you, Robin. When I first had the children going to the school that my wife and I both attended, there was an annual festival, and it was suffering. I don't know that it even broke even. Between the two of us, Rita and I, we worked very hard, and within 3 years, that festival was generating a six-figure income for the school and the parish. Very, very pleased in how we did it. It was collaborative. I worked on with a team. I brought in the music, the entertainment, and the food. It was very much a lot of fun working with neighbors and friends. It is something that taught me that when you work together, you can get much further along and in a sustainable way, hand it to the next group to come along and take it to the next level. Very pleased to be part of that program and very thankful.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Dowd, allow me to repeat the question. What lived experience, both personal and professional, have prepared you for this position?
Thank you. Being the city auditor for the past 16 years has prepared me, in addition to the 12 years of accounting and audit experience I had before taking this position. The past 16 years, I have learned much. I have great respect for what it takes for a city government to get things done. We have been aggressive at audits. Our audits have been focused on how can we better serve the community? How can we help the city receive services in the most efficient, effective, and equitable manner? We work hard. We have established a communication, more open communication with the public, with the ever-changing issues facing our community. We listen, and we decide what audits to do that will best benefit the community. Every decision I make is based on how can this better serve the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to stick with you, Ms. Dowd, so don't put that microphone down. Accountability is one of Leadership Long Beach's core principles. If elected, how will you use this office to ensure accountability across the city's many departments and focus areas?
Thank you. Everything we do to ensure that the departments are working, again, as I mentioned, most efficiently, effectively, to provide the services that the city needs. I have been extremely aggressive at going after funding and revenues that's due to the city so that we can provide the funding for the programs that are important for the cities. When we go into a department to perform an audit, I don't consider us the enemy. We are about commonality in helping the departments reach their objectives. Whatever that objective is, how can we as a city government do better? How can we streamline the services to provide the most value and what's most important to the citizens of Long Beach? So with that, we'll continue to open the lines of communication, work with the departments, and ensure that we can provide the most value at the highest standards possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dowd. Mr. Miles, same question. Accountability is one of Leadership Long Beach's core principles. If elected, how will you use this office to ensure accountability across the city's many departments and focus areas?
Thank you again. In 2016, the audit department itself performed 12 audits. Since that time, it's performed an average of 3. We're currently at 2 for this year. The things we audit should be the things that matter. This year we had a 22% raise in revenue in the COVID year. How many of you got a 22% pay raise? Look at where we're spending the money. That's where I'm going with open checkbook. I'm going to bring that in so that everyone can see where the money is going out. Many states across the country have it. Many cities, including our neighboring city of Los Angeles, has an open checkbook. It is my purpose to go in to prioritize the audits that matter so that you can see where the COVID money went, where the property tax abatement's gone, and Measure D. If we had left it alone, we would have gotten more money. Why? Because that bridge and that port would have generated higher revenue than the income.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. We're going to leave it. We're going to keep it with you. Let's move on to question number 3. How would the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
Thank you. Again, it's more direct and collaborative at the same time. The team works well, as we talked about earlier in the festival, when you can clearly articulate to the team the expectations and lay out what the expectations are going along, and continually review whether or not people are succeeding or need help to reach those goals. When the team fails, that is not good. So you want everyone participating. So you would see, if you asked my group, that I'm very, very collaborative. When I first got to Coors, I was given the position that a person had. She became my #1 assistant, and she helped me all along the way doing the things that made us as a team the #1 beer distributor in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. And Ms. Dowd, we're going to ask you the same question. How would the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
I think open and approachable. I've always had an open door policy. I want to hear from people. I never want to make people feel that I'm not approachable and accessible. So I have listened to them, and I welcome everybody's input and thoughts and opinions. There are some very serious, big, important decisions that need to be made for this big city of Long Beach with complex issues. And I seek other people's opinions and thoughts before I make decisions. So I believe that my leadership style would be one of openness and inviting, so that we can together make the very best decision possible for the citizens of Long Beach.
Thank you, Ms. Dowd. And turning now to our audience question, and I'd like to again thank the audience for their questions. Let's go with Mr. Miles. Mr. Miles, what would you establish as your first priority if elected?
I would be looking at affordable housing. When we're building $900,000 units and calling them affordable housing downtown, at least they come with an ocean view, but they're not affordable for everybody. In fact, only 560 people or families are going to get that. What I would do is target affordable housing and look at to see if there were any tax abatements given, and then schedule out where those tax abatements end. If you look at our property tax for the last 10 years, it's basically flat. Everybody here or anybody who pays a property tax knows it goes up 2% every single year. In 10 years, that's 20%. We went up less than 1%. So the first place I'm looking is, where did that money go? Because remember, we have record revenue. Today's CAFR said it's over $1 billion. Thank you.
Again, let's please hold. Let's hold your applause to the very end. Ms. Dowd, audience question: what would you say are your top 3 strengths as a leader?
Again, I think it's collaborative. I want to be open with people. One of my priorities when I first took office was to make sure that our office was accessible, that there was a two-way line of communication between the auditor's office and the public. The public is our client, and I wanted to make sure that there's an open communication. We reestablished the website so that all of our audits and reports are listed on our website, that the community can communicate with us through the website. We established an auditor app where the community can communicate with us. We reestablished the fraud hotline, so those who have tips on fraud, waste, or abuse can call in to that. We have established, I've been to every single council district to speak in community groups at every council district, neighborhood associations, business associations, community events.
Ms. Dowd, I'm just going to interrupt you, but the good news is I'm coming to you with the next question. What role, if any, does the city auditor's office play in police oversight?
Well, that's a very good question. When I first took office, I love to improve things. That's always someone that I've been, to find problems and make improvements. The city had not had an audit of the police department in 12 years before I got there. The last was 1994. I was elected in 2006. There had not been an audit of the police department in 12 years. Our office performed the first police department audit, and it was not easy, but we did go there because the police department was 45% of the city's budget, and the budget was having serious deficits. We went in, we had a collaborative approach with the police chief Batts at the time, and we found that we were able to reduce overtime by $4 million in 1 year by the recommendations that we made to civilianize positions, and that's something that actually exists today that I will plan to continue to implement those recommendations to make changes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Miles, give us your thoughts on the relationship between the auditor's office and the city council.
The auditor's office reports to the people. And sometimes when you are reporting to the people, you can lose your sight when you become very familial. When you are part of the team that is running the city, you can sometimes lose your track on what is important and where's the places to look. Sometimes you lose the track of how you're going to go about it. The city council are the leaders of the city. I would make sure that I was open to every one of them and was free to attend every one of their neighborhood community meetings, just like they would come to my porch talks where I held for anybody who wants to come and hear what the auditor is doing. I'm not sure how many people want to know what the auditor is doing, but you're going to get that chance. Thank you.
And as long as we're getting that chance, it's the chance for closing statements. And we'll start with you, Mr. Miles, please.
Thank you. Thank you again, folks, for coming out tonight. An informed electorate is the wise electorate. We've had an opportunity here in this great city where we have 340 days of sunlight. But you don't get that with the financials. Today we released a document that includes transactions that occurred over 22 months ago. It is time to break that chain to show you exactly where your money is going. That's what I intend to do with the open checkbook. That's what I intend to do by holding myself at arm's distance from City Hall, but at the same time showing them exactly what I'm showing you. So, on June 7th, please vote for transparency and change and vote for Dan Miles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. And we'll turn to you, Ms. Dowd, for your closing statement. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I'm very grateful and honored to serve as the city auditor. I feel like this position was tailor-made for me. I was born here in Long Beach. This is my home. I care about this community. I love this community. I'm dedicated to this community. I am committed. I have worked hard every day, 16 years, and every decision I've made has been for the benefit of the city of Long Beach and its citizens, and how we can improve as a city to be better, to improve. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to serve. I'm optimistic for the future. I'm enthused for the future. I've learned so much over the past 16 years, and I'm excited to apply the principles and the lessons and the wonderful experience that it's been for me, and apply that for the next term and commit myself. And I trust that my track record and my heart will speak for itself as I continue to serve the city in the very best possible way.
Yeah, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking these candidates for city auditor. Best of luck for you too. And we'd like to thank and excuse our city auditor candidates. And next we'll have the candidates for city prosecutor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now I'll ask the candidates for the city prosecutors to come to the stage. As you are coming to the stage, I'll go ahead and introduce the candidates in order of the names that are listed on the city clerk's office. And the candidates for city prosecutor are Doug Halbert, George Moyer, Nick Ligety III. And as you are getting seated, I will go ahead and review the format once again. Each candidate will have 1 minute for your opening statement, and then we'll ask 5 questions to each candidate. 3 that were prepared by the Leadership Long Beach alumni, and then also 2 from the audience. Each candidate then will close with a closing statement for 1 minute. And once again, if you want to submit a question for consideration, please go ahead and hold up your hand, and a volunteer will give you a card, and you can write your question on the card. Once again, this will be for the city prosecutor's office. Following the question and answer session, we'll have each candidate share 1 minute a closing statement. Remember, this is a forum and not a debate, so no rebuttal statements will be permitted. Once again, candidates, we'll have the lovely CJ keep you on time. And so when you have 15 seconds left, she'll raise up the yellow card, and she'll raise up the red card when you need to close your statement. Okay, we'll start in order as they are listed on the city clerk's website. So we'll start with Mr. Halbert. Let's hear your 1 minute opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Doug Halbert. I have the honor and the privilege of serving the City of Long Beach as its elected city prosecutor. I've served in this position for 3 terms, and I've been a city prosecutor for 22 years. And I say it's an honor and a privilege because it really is an honor when I go to court and I represent the people of the state of California. It's an honor not just to serve in this position on behalf of the city, but on behalf of the people seeking justice in court. It's also been a privilege to be part of Leadership Long Beach. I'm an honorary member of the board for Leadership Long Beach, and I'm a member of the executive program from a couple of years ago. I know the values of Leadership Long Beach, and I think that the values of Leadership Long Beach are exactly the kind of things we need in public office. And for 12 years, I've been doing that, and I look forward to the next term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. Next, Mr. Moyer, you can give your opening statement. You have 1 minute.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming out on a Monday night. This is the main event, the Long Beach City Prosecutors race. My name is George Moyer. I'm running to make Long Beach safe, healthy, and fair for everyone. I'm a public defender for Los Angeles County. I've worked in various courthouses around the county. Right now I'm working downtown handling felony cases, but I spent about a year handling cases in Long Beach, and the dysfunction of the office was obvious. The managerial bloat, the lack of training and support for the line attorneys, But on a deeper level, this was an office that its culture really wasn't built around seeking justice. It was built around seeking punishment, to the point where a judge had to stop them from singling out gay men for prosecution. I'm running to bring a fresh, open-minded, forward-thinking approach to this office, where we ask ourselves at every step, how is this making our city safer, and how is this advancing justice? I ask for your support. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Mr. Leedy, your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for having us here. You know, I looked back behind me, and I see our beautiful city. I've lived here all my life. But a little bit about me, the one thing I've learned very recently is that I don't like politics. And I am not a politician. I am a prosecutor, a career prosecutor. And I have worked for the city attorney's office, city prosecutor's office under Mr. Halbert. I've worked for the Burbank City Attorney's Office, and now I'm working for the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, where I am currently working in the hardcore gang division, prosecuting Mexican mafia hitmen. And I'm doing that now, helping the citizens, helping the victims, crying with them, and getting to know my defendants very well. And I think it's time that Long Beach had an actual prosecutor and not a politician in the office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leedy. Let's move into our questions. Our first question will start with Mr. Leedy, and here is your question. At Leadership Long Beach, we believe in a set of principles that are essential to all great leaders. On the table in front of you is a list of these principles that we embrace. Please select one that resonates with you and tell us why.
Well, it's hard to pick because they're all very important. As a prosecutor, I would say ethics are the most important thing. The worst thing a prosecutor can do is convict an innocent person, and we lose sleep over that. But also integrity. And just a quick story, we have to hold to our oaths as prosecutors. We are not necessarily reformers. We have to obey the law. And the quick story that I have is that you're all aware of George Gascon and his policies, and he was asking us to dismiss counts and charges that were, and strikes that were alleged, and pursuant to 1386, we're not allowed to do that as prosecutors. I tried a case in October against a 3-striker. He bragged about how when he got out, he was going to continue to commit violence, and when he came for sentencing 3 months later, after the directives of George Gascon, I held to my oath, and he was sentenced to 27 to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leedy. Mr. Moyer, you are next. I'll repeat the question. At Leadership Long Beach, we believe in a set of principles that are essential to all great leaders. On the table in front of you is a list of these principles that we embrace. Please select one that resonates with you and tell us why.
These all resonate for me except congruence, which I think is a geometry term. But for me, you know, the number one thing is compassion. We have to see the inherent dignity and worth in every human life. That's part of what drove me into becoming a public defender in the first place. I was defending children in juvenile court during law school. Some who were charged with doing horrific things, some who came from horrific families or no family at all. And I think the essential thing that this office has to understand is that the people it charges, people charged with petty crimes, are going to be back in our community again. They're going to be members of our community. They're going to be uncles, neighbors, folks who we have to interact with. And we need to make it so that they're people who we can interact with and that they can function safely with us as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Halbert, you are next. I'll repeat the question. At Leadership Long Beach, we believe in a set of principles that are essential to all great leaders. On the table in front of you is a list of these principles that we embrace. Please select one that resonates with you and tell us why.
All of them resonate with me, but I'm going to talk about the word accountability for a couple of reasons. We, as prosecutors, hold people accountable when they harm others, when they commit crimes, particularly serious and violent crimes. So we hold people accountable when they do that. As an office, I've held the office accountable as well. And I'll give you a very clear example. I did not see the court engaged in diversion and alternative sentencing. So my office created and now have some of the most innovative programs in America for court diversion and alternative sentencing. We found ourselves in the position of doing something because prosecutors are uniquely situated in the criminal justice system to decline to file a case if there's a better way to handle that case. So pre-filing diversion allows people to be held accountable, but in a way that doesn't set them back for life. And I'm proud of my office for doing that and being recognized by the United States Department of Justice as one of the finest agencies in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. We're going to actually ask you the second question first. As the city prosecutor, you are in a position to decide what crimes get prosecuted in our city. What principles drive your decision-making process?
Well, that question is absolutely on point when it talks about the discretion that prosecutors have. We have to make a decision whether to file a case. We then make a decision of what charges to file. And also, prosecutors are heavily involved in the outcome of that case. That's why it is important that we look at the full gamut of possibilities, because with misdemeanors, we have the ability to charge a case and seek significant time in jail, particularly if there are a number of violations of the law. But we also have the ability to treat it a little bit differently. So one of the most important things that we can do as prosecutors is exercise that discretion in a way that makes the community safer. Sometimes it means returning a person from the criminal justice system with a job that they didn't have when the case was brought to us. We created the PATH program here in Long Beach, which is the first jobs-based diversion program in the country. And I'm very, very proud of that because it does show us exercising the discretion that is necessary to return people better than they went into the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. Next, Mr. Moyer, I'll repeat the question. As the city prosecutor, you're in a position to describe what crimes get prosecuted in our city. What principles drive your decision-making process?
So the first principle is that this is a system that's supposed to advance public safety. It's not supposed to punish people for being poor. It's not supposed to enforce whatever vision of morality we might have. So if somebody else is engaging in conduct that doesn't endanger or harm anyone else, that's not a crime that I'm going to prosecute, okay? Possession of drugs for personal use, people who are forced to engage in prostitution to support themselves or their family, I don't think that those are criminals, okay? I just don't. When it comes to drug use, we have a health department. We need to build that up instead of continuing to pursue the most failed policy on the planet, the war on drugs, which has left us in California as a state with as many overdose deaths as the entire European Union combined. Finally, we need to follow the American Bar Association rules, or their recommendations, which is that if you don't have evidence to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't file it to begin with. And you certainly don't use the cash bail system to extract pleas out of people saying, I can't let you out unless you convict yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Mr. Leedy, you are up next. I'll repeat the question. As the city prosecutor, you are in a position to decide what crimes get prosecuted in our city. What principles drive your decision-making process?
Well, that's a very easy question. It's the facts and the law. And that's what a prosecutor's job is to do. Is the police officers will file a police report, we read the police report, and we determine if there was a violation of the law. Once we decide that, we can decide the severity of the law and how we can treat that case. I agree with Mr. Moyer that I don't call misdemeanor defendants criminals. Many of them are simply people who made poor choices. They're members of our community, they live among us, and they're not bad people at all. But we have to have accountability. We have to make sure that we do enforce the law. And that's why we have a city prosecutor's office. If we didn't care here in Long Beach about enforcing the law in our community for the municipal code, for low-level misdemeanors, then we would just turn it over to the DA's office. And if you've ever been a victim of a crime, even a low-level crime, as people like to say it, it's traumatic. I mean, even a bicycle stolen, your property is vandalized, it's a big deal to the person who's the victim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leedy. And actually, this is going back to you for question number 3. And the question is, how will the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
Well, I have a nurturing leadership style. It probably doesn't look like it. I don't look like it. But I do. I believe that every person has worth and they have their own path to success. You can't have cookie cutter prosecutors. There was a young woman in the city prosecutor's office who wanted more than anything else to be a city prosecutor. And, she said, Nick, I want to be like you. I want to be a fire-breathing dragon in the courtroom. And I told her, I said, that's not you. I said, you have such a way with you. You can garner so much trust with the jurors because you are genuine, and you have to play to your strengths. And it flipped on a light bulb with her. And when we nurture our prosecutors and don't cut them down, and we allow them to embrace their God-given talents, that's the kind of leader that I am. Thank you.
Thank you. And next would be Mr. Halbert. Let me repeat the question. How would the people who have worked with you describe your leadership style?
Well, they certainly would say that I'm community-based, and they certainly would say that I'm innovative. Community-based fundamentally because I do think this office needs to be outward-facing on occasion. Our office has created some of these diversion programs in partnership with nonprofits here in Long Beach. And we've done that because we believe that these nonprofits can do work better than anyone that's inside the criminal justice system. Just to give you an example, the LA Centers for Alcohol and Drug Abuse, LACADA, is a fantastic nonprofit that helps people who are trying to recover from addiction to substances. If we did not partner with them, we would not be able to put people into beds directly from the courthouse, directly into residential recovery services so they can overcome that addiction. Innovative is a word that's used a lot for my office. We've received over $1.5 million in grants from the United States Department of Justice because they see us as the model for prosecutors around the country. They want us to start programs and then show other people how to do it. So those two words would certainly be used.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. Next, we will have Mr. Moyer, if you can answer that question, please.
Folks would describe me as a team builder. So my main thing is getting everyone on board early, setting expectations, and just talking about what each of us can bring to it, making it clear that there's nothing that's off limit to be discussed, and really bringing in folks from different disciplines. So when you work as a public defender, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back most of the time, right? So I get used to working with everyone involved in that system. I work with offenders, I work with victims, I work with the police, I work with mental health professionals, veterans experts, judges, prosecutors. You have to work with every single person in this system if you're going to be able to build the buy-in and support that you need. And it takes that collaboration. So, for instance, in Long Beach right now, we don't have any system of restorative justice. So lots of times we have cases where a victim isn't interested in criminal prosecution at some point. They're tuned out. Well, the first contact from them, from the prosecutor's office, can't be a subpoena and then threatening to jail that person if they don't come to court or actually jailing them. We need to work with them, bring them on board to our team to advance justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. And now we have the questions from our audience, and I took a look at them, and they're pretty good. I'm excited to read these. Okay, so our final two rounds will be questions from our audience, and each of you will get a different question. And so first will be Mr. Moyer, and your question is, what is your stance on prosecuting those with mental health issues versus getting them help?
We should err on the side of getting them help in every single instance. I've seen a lot of folks, somebody actually just asked me this, why wasn't the person who charged the stage and tackled Dave Chappelle charged with a felony? Shouldn't he have gotten a felony? That's one of our beloved celebrities. It turns out Dave Chappelle talked with him after he attempted to attack him, and the man was under the impression that by doing this, he was going to somehow prevent his mom from being evicted from her home back east. Okay? So folks who commit crime when they're under the influence of mental illness or mental or developmental disability, they're not really committing crimes in the same way that you or I might. And so it's not fair to treat them in the same way as someone without those conditions. And it's also a place where intervention can actually make our community safer. At the same time, it protects them and their family from the trauma of incarceration. So I am 100% in favor of it. We need to use it as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Mr. Lady, now your question. All Long Beach City prosecutor candidates, or no, just to you, sorry. How do you feel about defund the police?
That's an interesting question. I do not agree with defunding the police. I think we need trained law enforcement officers on the streets. I work very closely with police officers, and I have for 12 years. not simply talking in the Ethereum, but speaking with them on a ground level. These are men and women who are dedicated to protecting the community by and large. With that said, there is no one that dislikes bad cops more than good cops and good prosecutors, because they make our job that much more difficult. And it's inexcusable when a police officer violates his or her oath of office and instead violates that oath of office with the community. It is important for our law enforcement officers to understand that the people that they are citing and arresting are human beings too, and to treat those individuals with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liddy. Mr. Halbert, your question is, how do you determine between a felony and a misdemeanor?
Well, the California Penal Code and other sections of law delineate what is a felony and what is a misdemeanor. And there's a classification that is in between. It could be filed as a felony or as a misdemeanor. Our office only has jurisdiction over adult misdemeanors. We do not have jurisdiction over felony cases. But an awful lot of incidents that happened in Los Angeles County are rejected for felony prosecution and referred to us to be filed as misdemeanors. In fact, I'm a member of the California District Attorneys Association, and I meet frequently with the elected district attorneys throughout the state. And there are an awful lot of things that would be filed as felonies in their counties that are simply called misdemeanors and sent to my office to handle. People would be surprised to know that. So the state law delineates which it is. We have to deal with some very, very challenging cases. And misdemeanors run the gamut from very, very, very serious, like vehicular manslaughter, DUI, cases like that, domestic abuse, all the way down to relatively minor things.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. And we're running it back to you with the next question. So, Mr. Halbert, your question is, what do you believe is the most challenging issue in the prosecutor's office? And what do you think you can do to reverse this?
Well, the most challenging issue that I think we face as a society, as prosecutors right now, is a rising crime trend. So as the city prosecutor, I'm primarily focused on public safety. Obviously, the police department is as well. But we've seen a crime trend happen in the last couple of years. To give you an example, in the LA County area patrolled by the Sheriff's Department, murders have gone up just in the last 2 years over 90%. In the city of Los Angeles, which is half of the county, the murder rate has gone up over 50%. Now in Long Beach, it went up 0 in the last year, and it was a negligible amount, around 16% in the last 2 years. But any increase in the murder rate, especially one that's happening, this is not a blip on the screen. We're seeing crime go up for the first time in about 40 years. We're seeing the crime trend that was declining over many years stop declining and is actually going up right now. As a city prosecutor, my fundamental job is to keep the people of Long Beach safe, so I'm going to focus on that in my next term.
Thank you, Mr. Halbert. Now it's your turn, Mr. Moyer, and your question is, would you support the city hiring people with felonies and who have paid their debts to society?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've paid your debt to society and you have a felony conviction, you shouldn't be barred from taking part in our economy. In fact, this is one of the main issues that this office has, is it tries to bring in as many people and prosecute as many cases as it can. You leave people with criminal records at the end. They apply for jobs. They can't get jobs because it pops on their record. Even if you file cases and then you later dismiss it, you know, in the era of big data, that's going to show on a good background check. It's a permanent disadvantage in the job market. And so, yes, I would absolutely support that.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. And lastly, Mr. Liddy, here's your question. What is your stance on the current no bail practice approved by voters?
Well, my job as a prosecutor is to follow the law, and if the voters want something, then that's what the voters are going to get. And that's been my central message this entire time, is that I follow the law. There's a scene at the end of The Untouchables, if anybody's ever seen it, where after Elliot Ness puts Al Capone away for selling alcohol during Prohibition, they asked him at the end of the movie, Mr. Ness, they're going to repeal Prohibition. He said, what are you going to do? He says, I think I'll have a drink. Because that's what a prosecutor does. And I have to say that, you know, in these situations, in these times where we have no bail and we release people, we do see these offenders come back, and they come back often. They come back very frequently. So I think that's something maybe the voters don't see. When I was in the courtroom, they'd have defendants coming out of lockup screaming that they wanted their George Gascon offer. They'd get probation, and 2 weeks later we'd see them again. So
Thank you, Mr. Leedy. Actually, you will have the first up for our closing statement, and so you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the fact that everyone's come out. You guys are concerned voters, and you have a choice to make. And it's the same thing that I tell my jurors when I'm trying my cases in my closing argument. I look at the defendant and I tell the jurors, ladies and gentlemen, I've given you the evidence and I've given you the law. But I'm asking you, actually I'm demanding, that if I did not meet my burden beyond a reasonable doubt to convict this person in court, you must acquit this person. That is the law. That is our charge. And it's the same thing I'm going to ask you folks here. You have three choices, and God forbid this ever happens to any of you. And I'm not wishing this, obviously, on anyone. But if you close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself or your loved one as the victim of violent crime, who would you want to be the prosecutor on that case? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leedy. Next is Mr. Moyer. You have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you, Susanna. You don't become a public defender because you want to run for public office. There are a lot of political consultants in here. I think you could ask any one of them if that's a good career plan. And 5 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. I would be the first public defender elected to office in the city of Long Beach. We've just put a public defender on the Supreme Court for the first time, and I would bring needed balance and perspective to this office. Most people recognize the fundamental need to reform our criminal justice system, that our criminal justice system in a lot of ways operates to perpetuate the inequities of our society, class inequities, race inequities, inequities against immigrants. These are all things that most people will acknowledge, and we also have to acknowledge that this system often operates to protect police officers who engage in abuse. I'm trying to make a city that is safe, healthy, happy for every person here and your families. I ask for your vote on June 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. And finally, Mr. Halbert, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you. The last 12 years have been an opportunity to reinvent the city prosecutor's office. We've created the most innovative court diversion and alternative sentencing programs in the country. We've held people accountable. We've secured grant funding to allow us to do things that no one else can do. I'm the only prosecutor I know that has a social worker on staff specifically to help people who are charged in offenses to get the help that they need. I'm the only prosecutor I know who does have a program to remove convictions of people, those old convictions that are difficult to remove. I'm the only prosecutor I know that's actually taken the initiative to create community-based programs that help a wide range of people. But what I'm really excited for is in the next 4 years, we need to focus on the homeless problem like never before. We need to continue to do reform that works for Long Beach, not just because it sounds good. And we need to make our community safer. So I want to thank you for the last 12 years. If you need any more information, go to www.doughalbert.com. Thank you,
Mr. Halbert. And that concludes our session for the candidates of City Prosecutor. If you give them a round of applause. You can step down from the stage. Thank you, everybody, for sitting tight. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the city offices. That was my first time really hearing directly from the candidates. I really appreciate Leadership Long Beach for having them share this opportunity. We'll be taking a break, and we'll have 5 minutes for our break. We'll return back at 8:17.
Thank you very much, Susanna. I do have a brief announcement to make as well. We received word this evening that Susie Price has tested positive for COVID and has just entered quarantine at home. So fortunately, we have the technology available to provide the inclusion and access that we would hope to provide for all of our candidates tonight. And we will be dialing her in to participate remotely with voice only. With that said, enjoy your break, and we'll see you back in about 5 minutes.